Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. We are going live here. I got ReadyPlayerWill here with me. We got our 2023 year in review. Hope everybody's having a great night tonight. Will, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Hard not to be full smiles after that amazing intro. I'm so happy you put that together. I'm doing good though. Middle of the week. We're getting close to the new year. I know we got a couple adult beverages table side here, ready to partake and talk about my favorite game with one of my best buds and have some fun with y'all.
Speaking of, I gotta crack that guy open.
So I have nothing to mix it with. I'm just raw dogging it with the Tito's. So you'll see me pouring shots throughout the live stream here, and that's my jam. I'm a shot guy anyway, so very happy.
There you go. Yeah, so we already got 19 people here with us, so that's awesome to see. Glad you guys could make it out to join us. So we're kind of a celebration here for the Leonis report. This was kind of our first collaboration together 1 year ago, where we just kind of on a whim got together and decided to review the 2022 of War of the Visions. So thought it would be good to do it again this year. And certainly there's been some high highs and low lows for the game this year. So we're going to talk about everything. So yeah, why don't we just get right into it then? We'll kick it off here.
Yeah, get us through here. Yeah, this is exciting. I love what you did here. JB did all the graphics work and setup for this, and there's a lot of good content here. I'm excited.
Yeah, we got some surprises, some new additions from last time around. So
this should be good.
Yeah, Brad, you like that intro I put together just to hype it up? All right, let's go. Let's get into the meat and potatoes here. So 2023, a year in review. We're gonna look back, share some memories. So first thing that I put together, I did put this together last year as well. And this is essentially just kind of a holistic view of the year for the units, sorted out by the release date and the elements. I have also noted the 100 cost stature of the units, which was almost all of them this year. Kind of few and far between. It was the exception, definitely, that we didn't get a 100 cost. But yeah, the very first release was that Dragon Quest. That kind of kicked us off back at the beginning of January. It seems like it was so long ago at this point.
It really does. It was a completely different time, different meta, different element strength. We were coming off of a huge windy year, and so I saw a big uptick, and then fire came in and brought wind right back into it, and it was an interesting time. You think of those units too. We haven't seen most of them in quite some time, so a lot has changed. 100%. Obviously, the power creep, big part of that, and we'll talk about that for sure. But I love this infographic. It tells you so much of what you need to know. The 100 costs included.
And you can kind of see the puppet master effect of what Gumi was kind of trying to do, at least on an element basis. Maybe you can see that they really had a concentration of light units there, kind of in the middle of the year. We had the fire units right before that. Then we kind of went into some water units and some earth units. So yeah, you can kind of see what Gumi was trying to do, potentially putting their thumb on the scale a little bit. But the interesting thing to me here is that, if you look at the total amount of units here, we're looking at, or I think it's like 44 or 43 total units. If you add
counted, I forgot. Yeah.
So it was an increase from what we had last year, and that was partly due to that crunch effect that with the road to worldwide there in the summer. We essentially got like maybe 5 or 6 additional units this year than we did last year. Gotcha units.
I think it's 45 total. I just tallied it up, but I just took a shot, so count me on that.
Yeah, and I think it was in like the mid 30s or high 30s last year, so significant increase, when it comes to that. But yeah, interesting stuff there. Can go.
It is. I do think. I was going to say. I would just real quick note. I thought, obviously, talking about how strong wind was in 22, you can see kind of the regression of the mean here. Only 4 wind units released, and the opposite for fire, where for so long fire was near unusable, and it really wasn't until that Sorrow Vision card came out, the impact that had. Because the units here honestly aren't crazy carry units for fire either. Yuffie definitely was, But Hyo, Roy, and even Kefka to an extent were kind of like, warm water for many people and how much they were pulled and used. But Fire still got a ton of emphasis on like vision card growth with them, and obviously Fire's in a much better place now with Soul and Shals, and just element wise, it is very interesting to see how they kind of played catch up on a few of these elements. Even something like the Earth units here, getting 2 Magic units to end the year. Earth was very low on Magic, so there's definitely a lot of compensation happening to kind of balance out what we saw last year.
And kind of piggybacking on that, the Dark element was one of the strongest ones last year. They got some of the heaviest releases. Only 4 releases this year for Dark, but still, because of the quality of the releases, they've been able to maintain themselves as being one of the stronger elements, which has been kind of an interesting story too. Whereas
absolutely,
Ice,
all 4 of those units are great.
Whereas Ice, they were, again, like you said, towards the end of last year, they really had a huge meta presence. They actually got a decent amount of releases this year, including 3 100 cost units. They haven't been able to maintain their meta position, although, a couple of those units did get a bit of play during the strike meta.
Right.
So a couple of new things that I put together here was kind of looking at the distribution from a different angle. So the previous one was looking at it by element. This one is now looking at it from a job perspective. So obviously we know that Gumi's been putting a lot of emphasis on job play with the vision cards and kind of setting up different ways to build our teams. So pretty interesting here that the majority of jobs were between 3 and 4 units released over the course of the year. Interestingly, two jobs didn't get any releases, and that was Book and Bow.
Yeah.
So definitely an outlier there. And then the Ninja Blade only 1. So they were kind
of
of
great. The Greatsword too. Is that Hyo? That's that lone Greatsword user in the year.
Yeah, just Hyo.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Obviously, that's kind of partially due to us not getting Bronwell and Astrius. It should have been 3 this year for us, but those 2 units did get delayed, and they're going to be pushed into next year.
Good call out.
So technically, they should have been at 3.
This is a great view in it. I mean, it kind of makes sense too. We have not really seen any Bow job-based vision cards. We've talked about that before, how the Bow units in general have really kind of like taken a step back, and not only balance-wise, but like just straight up character-wise, not having any releases. And Book, to the same extent, it's really just like Velis, Luel, Halloween, Lucia that come to mind as some of those primary Book users. But everything else seems relatively decently well-distributed. Obviously, a little love there for glove units, which there were a lot of glove vision cards that came out. I think they were trying to push those teams, but I think they're just missing one too many pieces. It was close, but just not enough.
Yeah, Glove did get some extra emphasis in global because of Addison and her vision card too. So that was kind of part of their bump there. But going back to the point on bows, and somebody in the Lucian in the chat brought up Shadow Lynx, who a lot of people are speculating is going to be that Bow Ashen Warrior from the new Ashes of Apocalypse. I'm low-key kind of down on her just because of the state that Bow is in right now. Just because the lack of cards, like lack of units. I think that Bow's in a much worse position than Book is. At least Book has Lucia, they have Velis, they have a couple of good units in there. Hopefully they'll treat Ibarra correctly, who knows, but
definitely. Well, at least Book, too, to my knowledge off the top of my head, Book has some good vision cards that even if a unit came out, there's a fair amount of vision card support. Now, I'll just bring it up supplementary here. I know the Vivi vision card is a major one that just came out for that. I think the Halloween Lucia vision card is another one, obviously super, super good. The Minwu vision card is another. So, like, even if a Book unit came out, there's enough support that you could probably still fit them into a bunch of teams. But if a Bow unit comes out, there's such a lack of any kind of Bow vision cards. Even if the one they made was, like, quote-unquote busted, it'd be really hard to still make a, like, formative team branching out into those elements, because you normally mix missile units with other missile units. I mean, maybe you'd have to think outside the box a little, but that'd be tough.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to like the original thoughts regarding Bow and missile being segregated in this job system. I think if they could go back and do it again, I think that maybe they would think about doing that. But
go
ahead.
I'll say retroactively, I would applaud them if they just said, "Hey guys, you know what? We're going to combine them." I see no reason why you couldn't. You know what I mean? Like, how many bow units are there really that you would have this massive trickle down effect? Like, I don't think the bow units that exist are all that overpowering or even that much in number that there would be a unintended consequence of making a change retroactively.
Maybe they'll do that when they finally add hope onto one of the jobs over here.
They'll have to.
Yeah. So that was the job distribution for units. So kind of a couple of different ways of looking at the units there, guys. So one other interesting look here. This is the distribution of vision cards for the job system. Obviously, that's been the majority of cards that we've gotten this year, outside of just a couple of elemental cards with the Dark Espers and the Final Fantasy VIII card for Squall. And the Sorrow cards. So just a couple of elemental cards this year. But as we know, those job cards, they touch 3 to 4 different jobs per card. So the numbers here do look a little bit higher. Any surprises here for you when you look at this?
No, you know why? Because I think we've been hyper focused on the ones that got the most cards. Right now, Sword Red Mage has the most. The second most is the Mace, and the third most is the Gloves. And I know because of your resource of tracking that, you and I have both pretty frequently talked about how much attention some of these classes are getting. So from like the maximum perspective, how many of them exist, I don't think I'm all that surprised. I think if anything, maybe just the ones that are on the lower side. For instance, like Axe, I feel like there's way more Axe Vision cards than just 6. Like I feel like we've seen more, but apparently not. I think that might be the only surprise. And even just like the extra emphasis on the Sword Warrior, I think it is in the very far right there that also only had 6. That's a class that not only character is very down, but vision cards is the support there is relatively minimal. And so it's not surprising per se, but a good confirmation of that. How about you?
Yeah, so one note on that, do keep in mind that we did have maybe, I want to say like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 job cards at the tail end of last year. I didn't include them in this. This is purely for releases from January until December. So I think a couple of those Axe cards, like the Halloween card, were
yes.
in that bucket. So
You're right.
But yeah, obviously Red Mage is another one that's got some global love with the Dwayne card, with the Sylvie card. Like it's been, I think even the Halloween the Sweetheart Miranda card touches that group. So
yes, it
all
does.
Cards that don't exist over in the JP version, which is kind of interesting. So I think had we not had those, they would have been maybe around 10 or 11 actually, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, again, Book and Bow are kind of on the lower end of the spectrum. Knight and Ninja also on the lower end of the spectrum. It's kind of funny because we think of Knight as a pretty strong group, but they really haven't gotten that many releases. I think it's just been quality over quantity kind of situation for them.
Absolutely. And I'm bringing it up. That's the, off the top of my head, Bradley's in there, Squall's in there. That's the Sword Knight, right?
Yes.
That, and Winged Stern is in there. I think the problem with that is literally just the vision card support isn't there, where the units are definitely there. And I've made a couple teams, let's say with like Squall and Bradley, and they've had some really good synergy in limited Guild War. But I know, and they have the Melnia vision card, which you've talked about is like arguably the best job-based vision card in the game, which has Mace on it. And there weren't that many like Mace support units. So I think we're just waiting for that like one extra piece of glue to overlap Sword Knight with something a little more well-rounded. Because they have a couple tank units that class and they're a little outdated, but you look at characters like Celeste, Engelbert, Whisper for limited Guild War stuff. Like there's a couple pieces in there that you could make the formings of a team. And obviously like Squall and Wingstern are kind of tanky enough that you may not even need to go that far. But I do think that like they're that one vision card away from solidifying them to a more well-rounded group of characters, because the other job-based vision cards here are like super high octane offensive that, yeah, maybe just something else to give them some versatility.
And I want to point out Glove here again was one of the strongest represented groups here, not only on units, but also on cards. So it does really seem like Gumi was trying to really make something happen with Gloves there. I know that some of us played with it and there was something there, but never really came to full fruition, I think, in terms of meta impact. But
No, definitely not.
still some strong pieces there overall.
Yeah, definitely very niche. I think if anything, it was for people that were having some fun on offense. Where you go, Kefka is a really strong glove unit. Obviously, Addison Rae. Renault is a really good character to add to that. To be honest, where she does a handful of different jobs, from DPS to support to healing. Even Summer Helena got a great upgrade with her 140 and how it changed her AI. I think just a lot of those other glove units kind of power crept between like More the Merrier, Garvel, Salier. Zoma's still very good. I know someone shouted him out. Zoma's still a very, very good glove unit, but glove could also use just that one extra unit, I think, to kind of buffer what they bring.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Zoma. I think that he's always been underrated. He kind of had a tough time window where, the fire meta was really kind of starting up when he came into the game. There was still a lot of evasion going on, so when he has his pockets of like, those things are outside of the meta, I think he does really, really well.
He is. And I'll just extra 2 seconds on that. There were other factors too at the timing where, number one, we were right before 3rd anniversary where we knew we were getting 140 upgrades, and we knew he would not be getting a 140 upgrade, if ever. Number two, if he does, we know those collabs run very infrequently. I think Nier is like one of the first collabs that is non-Final Fantasy to rerun ever, I think. I could be wrong, but like Persona hasn't, Dragon Quest hasn't, Nier finally did, Lara Croft kind of did, technically, but like, yeah, so I think there was some doubling down on like what's the future value of this unit, and no matter how good you are in the moment, if you just get power crept, like, waste of resources.
I mean, to be honest, that's something that has happened for years in FFBE as well, where you get these collab units and they never get their upgrades, or the upgrades are just so late that it doesn't even matter at that point. That we have seen definitely a trend of that here in War of the Visions as well.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so that is kind of the holistic view of some of the cards and kind of give some hard analysis here, guys. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that segment. But we do have kind of an interesting section here. This is kind of, again, looking through the lens of the year as a whole, some of the best moments, some of the worst moments that we can think of. And we're going to kick it off here with the worst moments of 2023. Start off with the down notes here before we get into the good stuff. So, Will, why don't you walk us through the worst of 2023 here?
Definitely. I mean, well, the road to worldwide seems like a gimme. That obviously was just a very sustained period of negativity where there seemed to be some miscommunications. There was a lot of people that were disenfranchised with how the game was being handled. There was a lot of just like character crunching that made it difficult to keep up, and the time investment was difficult. And then there were a lot of people that were just soured that the road to worldwide was a big like camel or straw that broke the camel's back, where there were a bunch of other things already, which are also on this list of top 5, that made things a little difficult to stomach in terms of playing the game. And so Road to Worldwide was a great outlet for a lot of that anger. And obviously we did a bunch of stuff on that in the podcast in terms of what we thought and what we would have improved. I know Orange A was vocal about many of the things too, same with other streamers, and obviously the community has been as well. But yeah, that's what I thought. Do you want to punt the ball back and forth here, talk about your impressions on these?
So Road to Worldwide real quick, definitely another big kind of issue with it was them really trying to pull the rug out from a lot of the global deals and perks that we've gotten over time. Thankfully, there was enough community like backlash that they have walked back a lot of that stuff that they were trying to take away. Right. They were definitely trying to pare us down to as much like JP as they could get us in terms of like, the lack of, basically all the perks that we had built up over the years. So I'm glad that the community came together and rallied, and at least we got some of that stuff back. But the damage was done for sure. Yeah. The second one was the offer wall fiasco.
Yes.
Obviously, that was not really that far before, maybe just a couple months before Road to Worldwide, a couple months before the Addison race. So this was kind of one of the biggest things that happened early in the year that really was getting people down on the game. It was a bug in the game. I'm sure everybody knows. people were able to essentially spend a few dollars and get much more Visuor than they should have been able to get, and people cashed in on it. You know, people have their own opinions on kind of the morality of it, but at the end of the day, it was a bug in the game, and I think a lot of people would have taken advantage of it if they could have, and kind of see what Gumi was going to do with it, especially kind of with what they had done before with like the fragments farming issue in the selection quest and things like that. So unfortunately, but yeah, it was kind of a tough time for the game.
That was a very difficult time. Obviously, everyone remembers it because I was one of the, if not the most noteworthy person to participate in it. And I'll be honest, at the time, I don't want to make this about me, because the offer wall was way bigger than just ReadyPlayerWill. But I remember, like, I didn't even think twice about it when I did it to say, like, oh, is this right or wrong? Am I upsetting the game? It was just one of those things that I'm like, you know what? If they don't like it, they'll take it back. I thought it was just like such a simple thing, such a simple non-issue. It literally took no more than a minute and a half of my time that, I didn't realize the ramifications of it would take so long to walk back. And I think that's what hurt everybody, where once they found out how much Visuor people had acquired, the lack of initial response from Gumi, the lack of any kind of resolution or timeline really like kicked. And on top of that, at the time, you have to remember, like, reincarnations just came out, all these 100-cost units just came out. Everyone's totally under the pressure of like, how am I going to like compete in this game? And all of a sudden you hear about a bunch of people getting a competitive advantage in terms of their resource spend. That obviously it just killed morale, which I think was a big part of Road to Worldwide kind of setting off even more fires. But yeah, that was a tough time. I remember like losing sleep some nights, just feeling distraught, because it's like, dude, the whole community's on fire over this, and how do you fix it? It's really only in Gumi's hands at this point. That was a very difficult time for the competitive parity of the game.
I will say that Gumi took way too long to like weigh in on it and say like that they were looking at it and what they were going to do. I feel like that they waited until they had come up with their full solution before they said anything, which I think was the wrong approach. They should have said something early on that, hey, we know about this, we're doing something about it, we'll tell you what we're going to do soon. Unfortunately, they allowed that fire to grow in the community to like a fever pitch before anything was done. I do think though that once they did something about it, they did the right thing in terms of taking back all the accrued Visuor, even if it was spent. I know from people that did spend, some of that Visuor, that it was eventually taken out and continues to be taken out. So, once they did get on it, it was a good response, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. And so the third one here, the Addison Rae collab, which wasn't really like a point of anger like some of these others were. It was more just a huge meme opportunity. People really scratching their heads. I guess there was some anger kind of at the developers to say, like, who do you think we are? Like, you think this is for us? Who are you trying to like bring into our community? So maybe it was a personal insult to many in terms of like who they picked as the representative. At this point, like, I don't think it really ended up being, I think of it, at this point, I think we're fine. I don't really think back on it negatively per se, but in the moment, absolutely, that was a very weird time. Fortunately, they came out with a great unit. If that was a terrible unit, boy, that would have been a huge blight. But at least, like, she continues to be super relevant. Which how much can you say that about a unit that's been around for 6+ months? Like, not often that you can bring that. But yeah, Addison Rae, how about you?
Personally, I didn't mind it. I was
no.
I didn't know who she was. I think she's very attractive, and that's fine. But as a collaboration, I thought it was a fine collaboration. But I know that the majority of the community, it became a meme. It was not well received, and at the end of the day, it was coming at a time where we did just have the offer wall. We did just have the 3rd anniversary with, things that people didn't like about that power creep and whatnot. And that whole, first 7 to 8 months of this year was a tough time. And to tack that onto it, the timing portion of it really amplified, I think, people's feelings on it. Yep. So number 4 is something that we're just kind of getting into the swing of now, and that is holo vision cards. I don't mind that there's power creep on vision cards. I think that Gumi has just overshot how much they've priced them at. And I think they're about 5,000 plus Visuor off on what they should cost. other than that, I'm fine with it. That's kind of where I'm at. How about you?
Ironically, I'm the same, if only because every time an anniversary comes around, you just know inherently it's part of the business model. There's going to be some kind of huge power creep. Last year, it was reincarnations. That's so expensive. The cost to acquire all those extra mind spheres, all the extra fragments, all the extra scrolls. The year before that was the trust stones. They're pretty freely handed out now on how you can grind for them, but at the time, pink trust stones were very difficult. You had to buy certain packs. The amount of rolls you could get per day was certainly limited. You had to buy a bunch of hammers, which were expensive to transfer stuff. So when I think about anniversary power creep overall, the Hollow Vision card is relatively cheap, all things considered. It's not a huge infringement of my quality of life of gameplay. I don't have to do anything new in the menus. So in terms of my expectations of the new power creep of the year, I actually think Hollow Vision cards are fine. I totally agree with you that they're definitely overpriced. Obviously, it hurts what we can do with them, and there's a lot of FOMO, and obviously it's going to burn people out faster, theoretically, but could be a lot worse. I think I'm kind of tempered on that one.
I have some hopes though that they've already acknowledged on the near live stream over in JP that that they have heard the community over in JP that they didn't appreciate the cost of these. So I do have some hopes that they will reverse course on that very soon. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Totally.
So how about our last one here, Will?
Yeah, so the last one, this is one that I really pushed for to have here, is the delayed pixel remaster and the Glex upgrades. That there are characters still like Sylvie, like Esther, like Shadow Lynx on Ice, who we just passed the winter collab. The fact that Shadow Lynx on Ice got nothing as part of the winter upgrade, I think are huge swings and misses in terms of bringing those characters to some kind of relevancy once again. Resident the Hoppy is another one of those who did not get any kind of 140. And then the delayed pixel remaster in terms of how long that took, that most of these characters now really aren't feasible now. They waited too long. And even the upgrades they gave some of those units, I think, are relatively lackluster. So in addition to the banners, we talked about that, the cost of acquiring some of those units to max them. I think just in terms of some of that older content, trying to bring it up to relevancy, definitely dropped the ball, considering these are some of the most fun and hyped units that people love. People love Esther and Sylvie from FFBE. Shadow Lynx on Ice got a lot of people angry, to be honest, at how underwhelming she was, that they didn't take that as an opportunity to capitalize and make her somewhat relevant again. The Final Fantasy units are again a huge moneymaker. Why don't you just do something to entice us? I don't know. That's one that I still consider a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I'm super disappointed on the pixel stuff because that was 2 or 3 months late. And those units, there was only a small handful of them that really had any sort of small pocket that you could imagine using them there, maybe for a month before, this new tier of units post Alaya came through. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yep.
That's really all you can say.
That's true. But that's the worst of the year.
Yeah. So we're through the worst of the year. I think that hopefully everybody in the chat can agree that I think it's pretty common sentiment that these were probably the worst things. Maybe the order is different to you, but I think those were definitely the lows for 2023. Now let's get on to some more positive stuff here. What were some of the good moments for the game this year? And I think so starting it off with number one, we're going to talk about something that really was just released for us in the last few weeks, the Trust Stone quality of life. And I think for a lot of people, this was something that it's a huge game changer in terms of more casual folks, especially that maybe haven't engaged with Trust Stones, that much quite yet. Maybe for people who haven't rolled that many Trust Stones, especially being able to use the same one on multiple units is a huge value add. How about you, Will? What do you think about that Trust Stone update?
Positively massive, and the best thing they've done in quite some time. To me, the most cumbersome thing of the Trust Stones was the menu system of how you had to go into your TMR, constantly swap things around. You had to keep them in a favorite sub menu. You had to find them. Over time, that favorite sub menu got so long that you'd start to lose where certain TMRs were in the list of that. And then you'd have to constantly switch them out on all different kinds of game modes. That if you had them on one TMR, if you wanted to change it up because you were doing guild raids that week, and then it was, they obviously had templates, but we only had 10 templates. So even then, it was difficult to save stuff. It was just super cumbersome. I can see how people hated it, but this is a huge change. I think the only downfall of this at the moment is that in Guild Wars, you can't differentiate on attack or defense which set you want, because occasionally you might want your attack team, your soul on attack, to have aim runes, but you can't because on defense he has agility runes. So that you're kind of stuck. That's the only downfall I can really think of. But other than that, like, oh, what was the point I was going to bring on that? Oh, it makes it so easy just to swap characters in between content. And then from an economy standpoint, as you pointed out, because characters can share trust stones, I was just talking about like how expensive they were for quite some time. This is a super economic way for people to get engaged in it, that if you only have to craft one trust stone, that's not as many hammers you have to use to keep your passives on the backlog. It's less farming you have to do for trust stones because you don't need as many, so you can use your energy somewhere else. So overall, like a big resource saved in that regard. So 2 thumbs up.
Definitely. I think really the last shoe to drop for trust stones is coming pretty soon, and we're going to be able to actually select the passives. We won't have to actually roll for them. So that's really going to complete, you know, any sort of excuse you could have, I think, at that point for not engaging with it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the second one we have here was another recent one. We've gotten some huge updates in terms of the efficiency, in terms of farming barracks shards, hard quest bonus shards for new units, and also something they've done promotionally for all the units in the game as well for a couple of weeks there. So we've really been able to get a lot of shards here the last couple of months, you know, in these free methods, which is super nice.
Yeah, I mean, you said everything perfectly there. To me, this is just a great way to get characters up to speed faster. I like them a lot better for casual fans who can now build things a little bit faster. And I like them simply because of a point that I forgot, and now I can't remember. Oh, it's a good incentive to pull the unit faster. There was always you could always farm shards, and you could always do barracks. But now that you know that if you pull a unit sooner, you get these bonuses in the short term for them, it is a nice little kicker to increase the efficiency of pulling a unit in the present rather than waiting on them and slow building them later. So as someone who constantly, fast builds a lot of characters, this is a really good improvement.
I agree with Lucian in the chat that they should make the double rate permanent. I think that should be the base rate, and then do ×3, ×4 for the, for the bonus collaboration events and things like that.
I'm with you.
How about number 3?
Yeah, so the number 3 is one that we loved. It's the Black Friday and the anniversary catch-up banners. That is perfectly, in line with the Road to Worldwide complaint that they didn't give us a lot of economic resources to keep up. And we weren't asking for free stuff. We were asking for paid bundles. Like, give us something we can put our money at for you. And it just never came. But Black Friday came. They had so many multiple packs of the pack H. They had the pack F again for people. They had so many good bundles in terms of like the deals on the banners of like select 5 units. They were good units to be able to pull and really keep people current with the characters. That 2 thumbs up. You want to keep people playing your game, you got to give them the things in order to play it. Like it was really good.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I feel like global in the first year or 2, we would have things similar to that. Definitely not on that level. Like those banners were definitely a tier above, but we would have things like that more often than we've had over the past year. So it was nice to see them kind of get back to some of that stuff. The fourth one here for best moments this year was PvP tournaments, and that's not only the official tournament, which was amazing. Obviously, that just wrapped up. Congrats to Black for taking that down. But also the community tournaments.
Yes.
WDL, WBEL, my tournaments that I run over on the manual server, among others out there that have been going on. So I think that especially the community tournaments is a good way to keep engaged with the game in a different way, and they're a lot of fun too. So what are your thoughts there?
No, totally. I mean, it's not, we're not a huge esports community per se, but there's certainly a demand for that, to just like be able to watch the thing that you like. And so I like how they organized it. It was a lot of noteworthy people as well in terms of who was selected in the community. So there was just a lot of engagement from top to bottom. And yeah, even the sub leagues like the WDL and the WBEL, I can't remember, but even those leagues, again, it's just another great way for us to interact and enjoy the game in a different way than you can otherwise.
100%.
Yep.
So the last one here is another more recent one. I think this is only a couple of months old, but it was a quality life for Guild War where if you were a couple men down, you can now have a few people set sub formations for attack and defense. And that way you're not automatically in a losing position going into Guild War. You can have them show up as, defensive or attack and send those into battle. So that's been another nice change, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely a favorite for even guilds that it's tough to compete in terms of maintaining 30 people at all times. And so to still maintain the competitive advantage to a degree by being able to fill out 30 is a big one. I'll do my little shoehorn honorable mention because I wanted to wrinkle it in here, but is the mock battle of all 30 at once. I wanted that to be on here too, that I can't understate that enough. It's not perfect. It still takes 10 minutes to run or whatever, but that's still one of my favorite stress tests now. If I set a team to be able to run through the gauntlet of 30 people and just see what it clears, it's so much more efficient than how you used to have to one at a time. Does it work? Does it not work? And we've talked about before how limited the testing hours are, that to be able to very quickly just mock all 30 and get a general feel whether the team is feasible or not, I think is a huge quality of life upgrade to how much time you would have invested otherwise to test your team.
I do wish it was a little bit quicker than it is to run all 30, but yeah, definitely a nice change for sure.
Better, it's still faster than fighting 5. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And you can view the replays if you want. I mean, it's as in depth as that. If you want to see why you lost, you can go look at it. I love it.
So we do have one final kind of honorable mention here, and this one has its pros and its cons. So it has its good points, it has its bad points, and it is the reincarnation system. Obviously, this was the big power creep at 3rd anniversary, something that you could really invest into characters. It was unbelievably expensive when it was first released. I don't even want to think about how much I spent on scrolls and all these things on that first month. They've definitely loosened it up quite a bit here, especially over the last couple of months. But it's still, I feel like, a little bit expensive, even though I think it is fun to be able to vertically invest into characters and make them more powerful. I'm for that. I think that's actually kind of fun. I think that the cost of it, especially now when it comes to mind spheres, is the challenge, especially when you're talking about really having that huge pay to win kind of, option, I guess. What are your thoughts on it?
Same. This initially started because it was on both the best and the worst, because there are things that we love about it and there's things that we don't like about it. You alluded to the costs already being one. Fortunately, they have eased up a little bit on some of the costs in terms of scroll availability, the amount of fragments and awakening tickets they can give out. So that's got a little easier. The mind spells are still tough, but I do like the competitive element to a degree. We've talked about this before too, that it does further separate casual players from top end players. But on that same note, we've also really been vocal about that. The gap between those two were also pretty large. That, I mean, to be frank, there is a skill difference in much of the community from very hardcore players, very casual players, that I don't think reincarnation affects that part of it. When you get to the top end of the game and you say Trials of Reckoning this week, let's say, for instance, all of a sudden reincarnation and what that does for people that are investing in units, it is in a sense paying for results because you're naturally getting better characters. But on the other hand, I like the idea that you can pick or choose a couple characters and really focus on making them better than they would be. And it is kind of a fun strategy to think through which characters are the best ones for reincarnation and seeing the theory crafting that goes on there. So I like a lot of the things about the system. Someone mentioned in chat, I think they're spot on, the distribution of some of the stats where you would never really reincarnate a missile unit because it's not a huge return on investment as it is some of the tanks, let's say. So that's where it's maybe some of the worst category, that some units are disproportionately negatively affected by it. But at the same time, some characters are positively affected by it, that you can give them elements that they wouldn't naturally have innately. So it belongs on both. And I don't know if there's a cleaner answer in how to do it. It just kind of stinks that sometimes it's tied to spend, but yeah.
I think that we just, at this point, we can hope that Gumi continues to taper down the cost and continue to give us free pulls and things like this that can assist us in kind of getting those transcendent mind spheres. And yeah.
Right.
So that is the best and worst moments from 2023. Now we're going to start getting into some of the meat and potatoes here of the actual awards for this year, or Razzies for the more negative ones.
Yep.
And we are going to start with the more negative ones here, just like this one. Oh, actually, before we get into that, I forgot about this. We do have a real quick special section here, just kind of looking at our top units used in Guild Wars. So first off, I have yours here, Will, if you want to say a few quick words here.
Yeah, definitely. So attack is, for the most part, many of the teams that I created. The defense is really a product of the guilds that I was in, that VIP, and then I'm retired, Korea in particular, and even Hiso setting up these walls. So my defense is really a reflection of the top end of the game more than my own preference. But for attack, Perrine was underratedly an amazing character for me for most of the year. I don't think I realized exactly how much I was using her, but through even before Strike meta, you can see even as early as March, she was starting to uptick for me, that I really enjoyed using her. She's kind of fallen off since then. Same with Alphonse, who was my first max reincarnated unit that I loved using him. And obviously Addison is my third highest, where I had a lot of fun with her in the fire meta in terms of what she brought to it. A lot of changes recently were obviously kind of fast and furious how much some of these characters came out, but overall, I'm actually excited to get back and using some Perrine, where I have not touched her in 6 months now, but her MA2 that came out is a sizable one, and I think there's probably more room for her than I think we remember.
Yeah, she's one of the best units of the year for sure.
Yep. I don't think it's a defense. I don't think I have anything to say other than Dark Meta carried us for much of it. Such a well-rounded comp. The Dwayne Vision card was such an integral part to keeping the legs on that running. And then you can just see Soul fast and furious there at the end of the year. That was really a big push by Quistis in Korea, that seeing a unit as good as him, they were like, guys, for 2 months, they were like, nobody spend Viz. Literally save all your money, because when Soul comes, we're max reincarnating the first week of Guild War. That was the big thing for 2 months, and it showed.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So here's the same thing for me. So I'm a little bit more, at least on my attack, I'm a little bit lazier there. I try to find something that will counter the top, 85th percentile of what I'm seeing for defenses, and I'll just roll with that until it doesn't work anymore. So you can see, for the first few months there, I was leaning heavily on that win team, Sottile and Jum, Glaciella, and that was really it was dealing with light evasion, it was dealing with dark walls, pretty much everything that we were seeing there for that first couple of months as ice kind of started to taper off. Once we got into that third anniversary, I went hard on Yuffie. I max reincarnated Yuffie, and I just rode her for months. And you can see that there for pretty much until June. I was on the Yuffie train. Then I went into Earth because I got Bradley and Dialdo. I used them, and I've continued to use them heavily until recently, where I've kind of gone into some light and some lightning and some Sol, and kind of a bunch of these. Like you said, there's been a bunch of new characters that have kind of come here fast and furious. But on the defensive side, Yuffie was my number one. I had many a day where I would get 3 to 4 defense with my fire evasion team, and again, I rode that for pretty much the whole summer. So I do miss that team. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, it was kind of fun to look back on what we used for the year.
It was, dude. The difference in attack teams is staggering. The way you literally, you could see it. You ride an element for literally months, as you said. I'm kind of surprised to see how, I don't know, just how infrequently it changed. That's such a diversion for me, where I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I feel like lightning today. I'm gonna run some lightning, and I'll switch. I'll do something different. Every day, it's just what can I theorycraft?
I think my approach is more on the defensive side. I try to go for stumps there, and that's much more fluid in what I'm changing. On the offensive side, it's maybe changing per map, or because the walls aren't really changing as much, at least in that earlier part of the year when we were kind of more in that 30 to 40 zone.
Good point.
As the year has gone on, we've kind of moved up the ladder. I've had to make more adjustments, but yeah, it was good times.
Yeah.